Let's understand Docker in a super simple way, with a real-life example. Imagine this. You're a chef. You want to cook a dish. But, every time, you have to set up the whole kitchen from scratch. That's slow and messy. Now, imagine you get a ready-made food kit. All ingredients are packed, measured, and ready to go. You just open it and start cooking. Fast, easy, clean. That's what Docker does for software. In tech terms, Docker is like a container that holds everything your app needs. The code, the libraries, the settings, the tools. Why is this useful? Let's say you built a website. If you use Docker, you can send the whole website as a container to someone else. And it will run exactly the same, no matter if they're using Windows, Mac, or Linux. Let's get started with Docker Desktop. Step by step. First, we will install Docker Desktop for Windows. It will take some time depending on your internet speed. Welcome to Docker Desktop. Let's go through the left side menu and understand what each option means. One by one. Ask Gordon. This is Docker's built-in assistant. You can ask questions about containers, images, or problems you face. It's a new feature, still in testing. Containers. This is where all your running containers will appear. A container is like a mini computer that runs your application separately from everything else. When you start something in Docker, it shows up here. Images. This section shows your Docker images. An image is like a blueprint or recipe. It has everything your application needs, like code and tools, to run inside a container. Volumes. Volumes are used to store data for your containers. Even if the container is deleted, the data inside a volume stays safe. It helps you avoid losing important information. Builds. This area shows you the builds you've done. When you turn your code into a Docker image using a Dockerfile, that's called a build. You can track its progress here. Models. This is a new feature in beta. It lets you manage machine learning models directly in Docker. MCP Toolkit. Also in beta. This tool is used for managing containers at a bigger scale. It helps in organizing and running many containers together, especially for teams. Docker Hub. This takes you to Docker Hub, which is a public library of Docker images. You can search and download ready-made images for different applications. Docker Scout. This tool checks your Docker images for problems. It helps you find any security risks and make sure your images are safe to use. Extensions. Extensions are extra tools you can add to Docker Desktop. They give you more features and help with tasks like coding, testing, and debugging. Bottom information. At the bottom of the screen, you can see how much RAM, CPU, and disk space Docker is using. It also shows if the Docker engine is running correctly. That's it. Now you know what every menu item on the left side of Docker Desktop does. In simple words. Let's test Docker by running a simple container. First, open Command Prompt as administrator. Then type the command. Docker run hello world. Oh, we've got an error. That's because the Docker engine is not started yet. Docker can only run containers if its engine is up and running in the background. So now, let's open Docker Desktop and wait for it to fully start. You'll know it's ready when it says engine running at the bottom. Alright, now go back to the terminal and run the same command again. Docker run hello world. This time, it works. We get the message. Hello from Docker. Quote. That means everything is set up correctly. Congratulations. You just ran your first Docker container. Now let's check Docker Desktop. Here, you can actually see the Hello World container listed. So, what just happened when we ran the command docker run hello world first? Docker checked if the Hello World image was already available on your computer. Since it wasn't there, Docker automatically pulled or downloaded the image from Docker Hub, which is like an online library of pre-built Docker images. Once the image was downloaded, Docker created a container from it. A container is a lightweight, isolated environment that runs your application. In this case, the container ran a tiny program that simply printed the message, "Hello" from Docker. This message was sent from inside the container, through the Docker system, and back to your terminal screen. All of this, pulling the image, creating the container, running the program, and showing the output, happened in just a few seconds with one single command. This confirms that Docker is installed correctly and is ready to use for bigger and more powerful. Now that you've seen Docker in action, let's quickly understand some key terms in simple language. A Docker image is like a ready-made recipe. It contains everything needed to run an application, including the code, libraries, and system tools. It's a fixed file, like a blueprint, from which containers are created. A container is a running version of that image. Think of it as a box made from the recipe. It runs your application in a separate, isolated environment, so it doesn't mess with anything else on your computer. You can start it, stop it, or delete it easily. Docker Hub is an online library where thousands of Docker images are stored and shared. When you run a command like docker run hello world, Docker first checks if the image exists locally, and if not, it downloads it from Docker Hub automatically. The Docker engine is the software running in the background that makes all this possible. It pulls images, creates containers, and executes all your Docker commands. If the Docker engine isn't running, nothing else will work. So in short, Docker works like a smart kitchen. The image is your recipe. The container is the meal you cook. Docker Hub is the recipe book. And the Docker engine is the chef who does all the work. Before we end, let's quickly see where Docker is used and why people love it. Docker is helpful for running any app without installing things one by one. Putting your app and everything it needs into one easy package. Testing apps safely, without messing up your computer. Moving your app to another computer, server, or cloud, with no changes. Setting up coding environments super fast. Making sure the app runs the same everywhere. Saving time and avoiding errors. Deploying websites and apps to the cloud easily. In short, Docker makes things fast, easy, and portable.